All right, this is a flip through of my latest lap book. It measures 6 1/4 wide by 9 1/2 tall. It has a 2 1/4 inch spine. On the spine, I have a Tim Holtz Foundry tag and a Tim Holtz keyhole, metal elements. This is the cover to an expandable file folder, and that is on top of canvas on the spine, along with some vintage ribbon. The belt is made out of ticking, frayed and tripled up for part of the way and doubled up the rest. The front cover has Tim Holtz stamps that I've stamped on various coffee dyed papers, some Tracy Fox number stamps, some Tracy Fox labels, Tim Holtz papers, a file plate or book plate in here that you can remove this and flip it over and put your name or some decorative stitching I've done on a hanging file folder. It opens up and the inside covers to the book. This one I created a pocket with lots of vintage printable ephemera, some more labels and some trim, Tim Holtz papers behind here, a bird field guide, snippets I had cut out of the field guide book, just some interesting information. On this side, it's more just vintage printables, the ephemera, an old postcard, my handmade by label down here. These came out from Tim Holtz paper. I've distressed the edges and left them as is so they're thin for these inside covers. This side, the left side, is the flip out made on a file folder, using the hanging file folder that's been decorative stitched around to create these 3 pockets. Inside I put, and that's Tim Holtz vellum. Inside I put these 3 decoupage and altered flinch cards, vintage flinch cards, and put words you can never have too much happy going down, and the back is the numbers, the flinch cards. They're very pretty cards. And stamping and Tracy Fox number stamps and Tim Holtz stamps. This flips open to show these, they're like little coin envelopes that I've altered. And this was a die cut, a Tim Holtz tab die cut, or miniature tabs that I put labels on, stamped labels. And fussy cut flowers, vintage music sheets, some designer paper, and more fussy cut flowers down here. In this first one, I've made the envelope, it's a pocket, and there's more of that vintage, not vintage, but that ticking fabric that I've made into ribbon. And I've put lined paper on the back to make a journaling card. This hole reinforces on all the holes. Underneath is another one of those ephemera printables. This is a photo frame. Underneath there in this pocket has another one of those printouts and some lined paper, and this one lifts up for more journaling spot, and another picture frame, photo mat. And they close up with these tabs. Here is some two altered seed envelopes, some designer paper. I fussy cut around a pocket watch out of a vintage Sears catalog I have. Another label, sticker, or glued on label. Under here is, I have this little, it was like a desktop calendar that every day had a different vintage like greeting card on it, and that was an image on one of them. Just thought she was cute. This is another one from that Sears catalog for Nicholas. The pendant, bird pendant. Inside that pocket is some more ephemera with Columar paper in the back for journaling. Everything's been stitched around. Decorative stitches, zigzag, straight stitched. This is another fussy cut image, another one from the Sears catalog, the ostrich tips, Tim Holtz stamp that I put over here. Another pocket watch from that catalog, some washi, and a pin from that catalog. Like a receipt printable, and more Columar paper for lots of journaling spot. In here I've put 3 stitch slots that I've stitched around some fabric that was glued on and then stitched around it to make them stronger. There's little ephemera in each one that can be written on the back. And more. Some bigger ephemera in the top pocket. Longer ephemera. Excuse me. In this part of the file folder, it's been glued down to make a large pocket. I put in some more ephemera that I just thought was sweet. The Clark's Thread Company. Lots of decorative stitching around each. Some Child's, you learn how to print paper. Some more of that Collimer paper. And this one's dry goods, fancy goods, notions, and some Collimer paper and line paper and some decorative stitching. And the whole page is lined with that Vintage Sears catalog page from that. Some more of that expandable file folder in the center with the hanging file folder that was stitched around to make a very secure spine. Underneath the papers on the spine is I forgot the name of it, the Tyvek. There's 2 layers of Tyvek and also a layer of muslin underneath in the front that you can't see, that the canvas covers up. On this side, I made it to look like an envelope with a strong button with a rusted eyelet securing it. There's more of that stitched upon hanging file folder with a diamond pattern. Some more labels, noteworthy. Some vintage dictionary page and some more Tim Holtz stamps. In here, the front pocket to this page is an expandable little pocket. They're decorated with those Tim Holtz stamped on thinner paper that I've cut out and just glued down. Postage stamp, Tim Holtz paper. And then inside is a tag that I created with using his papers. I think it's one of his journaling cards with lines on the back. On this side is a long gusseted pocket with Tim Holtz paper and a label there with a very long notebook using that vintage ledger paper that was really in good shape. This is a book plate. I had found a box of them. These, I think I dated them back to the 1940s, the 30s or the 40s for this style. So that's an original book plate. Some real 1960s postage stamps, United States postage stamps, some more of those Tim Holtz stamps stamped on papers. Over here is an altered junk mail window envelope that I've created. I've collaged with some, I got a steam engine, an old vintage book from the 20s, a steam engine book. There's some of those papers, the vintage music sheets, some printable paper, a label, some designer paper, and then a large Tim Holtz tag out of his papers. Created this tag journaling card. It has coffee dyed paper on the back. It just makes it so the flower peeks out. On this side, I just collaged with some Collamer paper and stamped on it, and some designer paper, more of the printable paper, music sheet, and some words: discover, possibility, wander. I put stitched in seam binding in this hinge for more strength. These are vintage index card dividers. My husband had gotten me. Chose the ABC. And they're backed with just some papers. I made muslin hinge on each of these. I had to fussy cut those hinges to get them to fit right. And some green lined graph paper, some designer paper that I used on these. I just like that design. Some more Tracy Fox number labels that you have to print. You print and you fussy cut. In here is Tim Holtz papers with a tab cut out of his papers. I made a little book using his papers again. In the same bird that's, no, this is a robin. And in here is, slips under here is like a little raggedy booklet, some more of that fabric up the top that I used on the slots. Just a variety of coffee dyed graph paper and all kinds of pages. Just a little raggedy booklet to write in. In the center, I've done, it's a flower field guide. I took a page out of that with the forget-me-not, whatever it's about. And then the other side has the lily of the valley, and I made this little flip. This is another ephemera printing. I did on cardstock. And then I had this basketball score sheet I had found in a thrift shop. I like the edge on it. That I made a little fold out for journaling spots. And that just flips underneath this tab. Here is an altered, I think they're like cookie bags, and they have this oval acetate window. In this one I put another tag I cut out of Tim Holtz papers. That hanging file folder I made into the tab. Everything's been stitched. This is a Tim Holtz journaling card, actually. And that goes into this pocket so that the little yellow flower peeks out. Just lots of collage and labels on the interior and places just you can jot little things down. Some washi stickers, some leaf washi stickers, and I cut out some ring bound things out of this paper to make like a hinge and just to give it a nice look. In here I've included this tag and with an additional pocket. It's another one of those ephemera prints, just with a ticket and steel pens, and it's another one from Tim Holtz die card and Tim Holtz ephemera, and that goes in that little secret tuck behind there. And this all folds up and closes up. This cotton cord. In the center is more of that hanging file folder. It's really thick stuff, and I like the leather look, and it's stitched around. And the hanging file folder, this is the expandable file folder, and this is the hanging file folder. Everything's been stitched around. The rusted eyelets for the elastic, which you can attach later on after you take a few things out. You could probably put a small notebook or something under there, slide it under. There's a Tim Holtz key and a tag, Inspire, with some numbers, 3197. On this side, it's more of that, it's kind of like a twill. It was a vintage twill, also something my husband found. Then I created these 3 acetate window pockets, and there's tiny brads in between some Tim Holtz quotes that I've cut apart, and so the adventure begins. And then I wrote, life is good, and then live in the moment. I created 3 slides. They'll have a little eyelet in here and some more cotton twine. The Tim Holtz vellum, they're decorated on both sides to create these really fun slides. Kitty, go. And they're just fun. This flips open to to another altered junk mail envelope. Tuck this under with edge here, and it's Madame Bloomer's Egg Saver. It was a printable little envelope. I imagine it was like a powder. And it is an envelope, so I put a little ephemera piece in there. This is held closed with a magnet that's underneath a piece of muslin. The other one's underneath the back side that you can't see. I put in a vintage receipt that was printed on parchment paper for some more writable, more journaling areas. I just tucked that under there. This side is a piece of homemade glassine I made with parchment paper. I like the feel of it. It is a pocket. It has lots of decorative stitching around this hanging file folder. This is a Tim Holtz paper with the eggs, nest and eggs, familiar birds. There's the nest under there. It is a pocket. I chose not to put anything in it yet, but it can be used as a pocket. More of that hanging file folder, the edge that I just like the look of, and I put some decorative stitching on both sides of it and added it to the edge here to expand this to make it a nice tuck spot. I tucked in this little booklet I made. It's been stenciled with the Tim Holtz stencil, like coffee splatters. I love that stencil, coffee rings, and has some coffee dye paper to make a little booklet. It's been stitched around. On top of that is an altered policy envelope that I've cut the bottom off to turn into this little pocket. And in this side is a little, I think it's another Tim Holtz journaling card and some Tim Holtz words, photo moment. And I backed it with some Collamer paper and On the Road. Collaged and decoupaged. I decoupaged the butterfly and the flower and the vintage dictionary page on the front. Has a nice feel. In here is another one of those pictures from that desktop calendar I had. Cute little birds. I mean, a little girl bird with the umbrella, and he's dressed up with his monocle and his cane. Just something a little whimsical for this little pocket. Stenciled the policy envelope with Tim Holtz stencils, and in the policy envelope is a large ephemera piece stitched around and backed with some green graph paper, and creativity takes courage. On the back, I've just put it was another calendar I had with some quotes on it, and some Colmer paper, and success is not final, failure is not fatal, it is the courage to continue that counts. And there is only one thing that makes a dream impossible to achieve, the fear of failure. So I thought those were inspirational quotes. Behind here is some more vintage dictionary page. Guess I chose to use the letter H, and hummingbird was one, so I put hummingbird up top there because there's birds on the back of this vintage this Tim Holtz paper, very vintage looking, and these just tuck underneath there. On this side is a Edith Holden book page with the yellow hammers feeding in stubble, which I thought was beautiful, and I'd done this stitch that almost looks like bird footprints. In here is some printed on parchment, like a receipt, just some more journaling areas. And this is a full page, and it was a printable, I guess, of checks that you could order. Specimens of lithographed pocket checkbooks, and I thought that was pretty neat, and it's been distressed, but it's on the parchment paper. Behind here is what I've created is like a clipboard and hung on with this Tim Holtz Bulldog clip. And then that hanging file folder. At one time, these were hanging file folders. My husband also got me. They had a rod that went through them. Here's another printed on that parchment. There's a little notebook. Well, it's not too little, but it's good size and beautifully coffee dyed, stained, plus I ironed them. And some ledger paper, and it alternates. And I've left the original. I know these are fairly old. They're very thick. On the back, I've just used that coffee splatter stencil, and then the Tim Holtz measuring tape stencil in the back. On the back of this clipboard is a fussy cut butterfly from that bird field guide, some designer paper, some Tim Holtz greenery die cuts that I cut out onto colored paper. Another label, some more vintage dictionary page, and a printable that's can be written there. On the Bulldog clip, I put a ball chain, Tim Holtz ball chain, and This was Nick the Booksmith. It was printable, a luggage tag. So I made it so that the name and the date, destination could be taken out and you can write on it. And that just clips that into place. Here I've used the Tim Holtz paper with these beautiful moss, and I've created some slots. There's 2 going sideways and 1 going down. They have pockets of copy paper underneath so that nothing just falls away. I stitched around these slots also to give strength. Some more ephemera. These I've line stamped using the cardboard and put on Tim Holtz the book page words. Magic and Truth and Exploring. And this one is just another printable ephemera, and Daylight Dreams, and some writing areas. And there's a Strange Fascinating, some more writing areas. These kitty go. And this all folds up. I like to fold it this way, but if you choose, you can fold it this way too. Over here is an expandable pockets. It's got the rusted eyelet and the button made out of that expandable file folder. Tim Holtz paper for the flap, more paper at the bottom for the edge. I don't know if that was a printable or it was something I've had, but it's a sticker, a label sticker, and I've cut out some tabs using Tim Holtz paper on these. This is a Tim Holtz ephemera. It was a frame, and I put acetate in the window. This was also in that ephemera pack, this card, and this little medallion that I've cut in half and put an eyelet and some red twine and some lined paper on the back so that it slides in there. These are made with the vintage straw envelope. My husband also got me those. And there's 3 large expandable pockets. In this pocket, I've put a notebook of sorts in Tim Holtz paper that hang in file folder. It's all been stitched. Some lined paper on this side. I've created a pocket with the leftover vellum. And I had a vintage receipt book that I took 5 pages from and coffee dyed to put them in there, and more journaling, writing space. It's like a wallet type. And then just more Tim Holtz paper on the back. In this one, I've created two journaling cards, which can be written all over using some printable ephemera, green line graph paper. You can never have too much happy again. That was a Tim Holtz stamp. In this one, it's coffee dyed paper in the back to coffee dyed paper. Another large one that's the journey is the destination, stamped in green, and more of that green graph paper that's been coffee dyed. There's more of that paper that I've done that triangle print, triangle stitching on. And this closes up. This will expand. I've created pleats along there so it can expand quite far. As I said, a lot of stuff would have to be removed to really, I mean, you could still stuff quite a bit into this pocket. The back of the book is Tim Holtz paper, and I think a Tim Holtz label, and it's stamped on that piece of paper. Go kitty. The ephemera printable I've turned into a tuck and tucked in two little ticket type things that I've stamped on and done some corner work. Live, create, tell a story, the best is yet to come, on these little tickets, checks that just tuck in there. So I want to thank you for watching and have a great night.